The Kia Stinger is Korea's answer to the BMW 4 Series Gran Coupe, a slinky four-door fastback that's helping Kia dip its toe into the premium sector. That is one striking-looking car. And it's a Kia, you say? It looks like Grand Theft Auto just added an Audi S7 to its car lineup. Kia reckons the Stinger was inspired by big GTS from the 1960s, like the original Maserati Ghibli, but there are definite nods to contemporary premium cars too. It's a handsome shape, but some of the fussy detailing and chrome looks a bit tacky.
And if you think Kia's been here before, it has. In a way, the Stinger evolved from the Kia GT concept that was shown back in 2011. What's under that long bonnet? Delight or disappointment? That's up to your wallet. There are 3 engine options offered in the UK: a 197 bhp 2.2-litre diesel, 62 miles per hour in 7.3 sec. A 244 bhp 2.0-litre petrol, 5.8 sec. Or a 365 bhp petrol, 4.7 second. Track weapon or mushy GT car? Well, when we first got behind the wheel back in June 2017, we only got about 19 minutes on track, enough to do 2 laps of the Nürburgring behind Dirk's Choiseman, before being quickly ushered away to wonder what had just happened.
If Dirk's name sounds familiar, it might be because he was man at the wheel when the R33 Skyline pulled off the first 8 mean lap back in the 1990s. And this pointless titchy test drive of a hopelessly optimistic new car in a totally unsuitable environment taught you what exactly? Not to be so judgmental, for a start. The Stinger is actually a very handy piece of kit, and that's despite being bigger and heavier than the opposition. One of the reasons it's so handy is that its chassis was signed off by Albert Buurman, a 30-year BMW veteran who spent his last 8 at M Division. Just imagine the size of the check involved.
Must have been like the ones people hold in lottery win publicity snaps. What's so good about it? How about great body control from 2-mode adaptive dampers, accurate steering, a decent resistance to understeer, and properly adjustable and pliant rear drive handling that benefits from a standard limited slip differential. With apologies to Kia, this car is shockingly good to drive, feeling in no way out of its depth on the Nordschleife, even letting you indulge in cheeky oversteer slides coming out of the tighter corners. There's a 4-wheel drive version available in some markets that won't come to the UK. Don't mourn it. We drove both and the rear driver is far more engaging.
And what about on-road? You know that thing when a car thrills you on track but then becomes an absolute pain in the ass once you hit the public highway. That isn't the case with the Stinger. The pliant chassis we talked about works wonders on-road, traversing bumps and lumps in the road with admirable composure. Turn into a bend and the Stinger's 1.8-ton curb weight fades into the insignificance as the front end moves obediently towards the apex. The steering might be low on feel, but it is well weighted and, in tandem with the chassis, breeds enough confidence to start taking some serious speed into corners. Drop down to either the 2.0-litre petrol or 2.2-litre diesel Stinger, however, and that adjustable electronic suspension is no longer available. The upshot being a ride which is markedly more fidgety than in the top-spec GTS.
Even with the smaller 18-inch alloy wheels, your average British road surface manages to unsettle the Stinger's low-speed ride, spoiling the luxury feel of the GTS. As a nod to the hot BMWs Buurman spent so much of his career creating, the Stinger maintains its adjustable nature on road. It doesn't feel invincible, but provides the tools and feedback needed to coax it down a challenging road. We won't go the whole hog and say it's as good as a 440i Gran Coupe, but it does feel more exciting than Audi's S5 Sportback.
What about the engines? Not quite as special, though both petrol variants look strong on paper. GTS cars get a 3.3-litre twin-turbo V6 that makes 365 bhp and 376 pounds-feet of torque. Like all Stingers, it drives through an 8-speed gearbox, lifted from the Sorento SUV, and can take the GT to 60 miles per hour in 4.7 seconds and leave German rivals trailing with its 168 miles per hour top speed. But it's not massively characterful. The noise being pumped through the speakers sounds okay, but is never going to wake your neck hairs up. US cars get a slightly louder exhaust, but tighter European noise legislation means we're not allowed it here.
Salvation may be on the horizon, however, as Car UK is looking at offering an optional exhaust package on the car later in its life cycle. Opt for the snappily named 2.0-litre TGDI entry-level petrol, and, while the exhaust note is still nothing to write home about, there's a decent turn of speed on offer. Acceleration from a standing start to 60 miles per hour takes no more than 5.8 seconds, while top speed is 149 miles per hour, proper BMW 430i Gran Coupe rivaling speeds. There's power right the way throughout the rev range, despite a fairly narrow peak torque band, plus there's reasonable incentive to take the turbocharged 4-pot to the red line should you wish.
It's not like you get the hand-me-downs throughout the rest of the car either. The Brembo brakes and adaptive suspension are exclusive to the 365 bhp GTS model, yet most other features are standard on GT Line S cars, including the rear-wheel drive with limited slip differential layout. Granted, the reduction in torque over the GTS, 260 versus 376 pounds-feet, means that big back end won't come around as easily under power, but the agility and directness remain.
What's that Sorento gearbox like? Honestly, not great no matter which engine you go for. It's fine if you're trundling along, but the moment you give the throttle a good pasting, things start to unravel. The changes are smooth but often hesitant, and the lack of a manual lockout mode. Oddly, there is one in the Sorento. Means that if you don't continuously flick through the gears, it'll revert back to automatic mode, and the rest of the package. The huge wheelbase means there's stacks of rear legroom, although thanks to the sloping roofline headroom is a little tight for those after 510.
A Jag XC feels like a Supermini in comparison, and about as nicely put together. The Stinger's not quite up to Audi standards in interior design and finish, but it's handsome. Feels good, and being a Kia with an uphill battle on its hands persuading people to choose it over a BMW will come loaded with kit. Prices are from £31,995 for the entry-level 2.0-litre petrol model, up to £40,495 if you want the top-of-the-range GTS version.
Verdict. The Stinger GTS is just about as good as we could have expected it to be, and after all the hype, that's high praise indeed. It's fast, surprisingly fun to drive, stodgy gearbox aside, and a capable all-rounder which has a decent chance of tearing customers away from their beloved BMWs and Audis. Go for an entry-level 2.0-litre petrol, meanwhile, and you still get a well-equipped, striking-looking saloon with strong performance figures and the handling to match. It doesn't feel quite as special as the GTS, but still has enough about it to provide a capable, left-field alternative to more established rivals.